Okay. Is this a speaker? Hi. 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 Okay, no. No. Shh. Don't scream, okay? Look, I don't. Okay, well, look, I didn't want to have to do this, okay? But you're being too loud, and if I can't hear myself think, I'm not gonna be able to get through this. So, I'm sorry, um, sorry. I didn't want to have to do that. I'm sorry, but the quicker I can get through this, the quicker you can leave. And if you're talking, I can't listen. I can't hear myself, so you have to. Okay, no, don't try and move. I tied you up, and your legs. You'll get it eventually. Okay. So I really need you to just listen because I have a lot to say and a lot to go through, so I hope you're ready. So, today we're going to be talking about Resident Evil, okay? We're going to be starting with the first one because that's how numbers work, but we're going to be talking about 2, 3, Code Veronica, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So, are you ready to I have more tape if you go through that one. Don't make me. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, to look about Resident Evil 1 first. Resident Evil 1 was released March 22nd, 1996 on the GameCube. It was released by Capcom and directed by Shinji Mikami. It was remade in 2002, and that's the main version we're going to be talking about because the story is adapted a little bit better, the characters are a bit more fleshed out, and it's kind of just better to look at because I don't want the characters looking like Minecraft blocks. In the game, you can play as either Jill Valentine or Chris Redfield. Jill is played by Heidi Anderson, and Chris is played by Joe White. Chris and Jill are members of an elite police unit called STARS. It stands for Special Tactics and Rescue Services. It's a branch of the Raccoon City Police Department. Raccoon City is where a lot of the first few games are set. Chris and Jill both have backgrounds in military training. Jill has skills in unlocking and bomb defusal, and Chris is a marksman. He's a good shot, but not much is known about their backstories at this point. When you play the game, you get to pick either one of them, and there's slight gameplay differences when you pick one. When you pick Jill, you get a little bit more inventory space, and she also always has a lockpick equipped. Chris has more health than Jill, so he can take a few more hits than she can, but he does not have a lockpick and will always have to find small keys to go through doors that Jill could just use her lockpick on. Now, you get a full story when you play as either Chris or Jill, and depending on what you do in the game, you might get different outcomes. But what we're going to do for this video to keep it cohesive, we're going to be discussing Jill's story and going over a little bit of changes that Chris has at the end, because I feel Jill has the more complete story. I feel if you play Chris, you might be feeling like, oh, I think I've missed something, and you get those answers in Jill's story. But we'll go over the differences at the end, the little slight tweaks. There are also multiple endings, depending on if you save characters or not. We're not going to really go over that. We're kind of just going to go on the pretense that we're taking the best ending for Jill and the best ending for Chris when we discuss the little differences for him at the end. I think I might have swallowed some of that duct tape. The game has fixed camera and tank controls and mainly focuses on ammo conservation, horror, survival horror, and puzzles. That's the other thing. A lot of puzzles in this game, so if you're not smart, oh well, just look it up on YouTube. It's not 1996 anymore. You can just look at a walkthrough. This game is widely credited with defining the survival horror genre, so it's a pretty big deal. That's why you're going to listen, and that's why you needed to be quiet, because this is an elder. This is a founding father of of most games that you like to play today. So show some respect, punk. So we're mainly going to be talking about the story and the lore. Not really too much about the gameplay, but we will talk about gameplay elements that come through, that weave their way into the story. So, you ready? Let's begin. Resident Evil 1 takes place on the night of July 24th, 1998. So it actually takes place in the future from when the game was first initially released in 1996. The inciting incident for the game is a series of murders in the Arklay Mountains. It's a geographical location overlooking Raccoon City, where the STARS branch and Raccoon City Police Department is located. The members of the RPD's veteran unit, the STARS unit, have two factions, I don't know. Alpha Team, right here, and Bravo Team. Sorry, Bravo Team, I'm probably going to be standing in front of you. That's Bravo Team. These guys, don't worry, there's going to be more of them. So initially, Bravo Team, first responders, they're going and they are investigating the Arklay Mountains because there have been bizarre murders where the victims were apparently eaten. So that's not good. So they sent out the Bravo Team to go investigate, but after radio silence, Alpha Team, the ones, they pulled up their bootstraps and went after the Bravo Team. And that's the inciting incident for the game. On the site of where the Bravo Team was last located, they find a helicopter that has crashed, and they find the body of the pilot inside. So, not very good. So, let's quickly go over Alpha Team. Chris and Jill, protagonists. Albert Wesker, he's the captain of STARS, big boss, big man in charge. He's pretty no-nonsense, doesn't really show emotions, but he's the one who's leading the investigation. Barry, he's one of the older guys, so he takes charge when Wesker's not around. Brad, don't actually see him in the game, which is why I had to use his little illustration instead of an actual game screenshot. He is the helicopter pilot. He is the one who flies in the Alpha Team when they're going to investigate the Bravo Team. Joseph Frost, he is another member of the Alpha Team. You're not going to get to know him very well. Chris, Jill, Wesker, Barry, and Frost. They don't actually call him Joseph. I'm pretty sure they just call him Frost in the game. They go and investigate the crash site of the pilot. While they're there, a group of dogs come up and attack them. They kill Frost. I told you not to get attached. They start chasing after Jill and Chris, but luckily, Wesker, big man Wesker, big W, saves Chris and Jill. Well, it's actually just Chris, but by extension, Jill as well. They retreat back to the helicopter, but Brad, seemingly out of cowardice, has flown away. He leaves them stranded in the woods where they found the broken helicopter and where there are a bunch of dogs trying to eat them. So now with no getaway, they spot a mansion in the middle of the woods and run there. They sprint and into the mansion they go, and now begins the beginning of Resident Evil 1. Now this is where the first major change is for Jill and Chris's story. Whoever you play as, one person that you're with will not make it in. For Jill, when she and the Alpha Team make it in, Chris is not there. They get in to the dining room because that's where the big doors to the mansion open to. Chris is not there, so she's there with Wesker and Barry. Jill tries to go and search for Chris, but Wesker tells her not to. Barry and Jill investigate the dining room, where they find a pool of blood, and they hope it isn't Chris's blood. Here, we encounter the first zombie of the series, and you have that iconic turnaround shot. He's actually nibbling on the body of Bravo Team member Kenneth, who also doesn't really have a good appearance, so I had to use his illustration. Sorry. So, after Barry and Jill deal with the zombie that was eating Kenneth, they return to the dining hall, but Wesker has also disappeared. Seems a bit suspicious. Chris and Wesker are both missing in action. They don't know where they are, so it's just Jill and Barry now. Frost is dead, Brad flew away, everything's a mess, it's not good. Barry and Jill decide to explore the mansion, try and find Wesker and Chris, and find out why there are zombies all over the place. But Barry gives Jill a parting gift, a lockpick, because she is the master of unlocking and is currently lockpickless. So we're going to be following Jill for the rest of the game. A few characters will show up that we can talk to, but it's mainly going to be the Jill Valentine show. So Everyone say hi to Jill. She'll be our host. I'm just the unreliable narrator. So Jill begins exploring the huge mansion. It's got a lot of corridors, a lot of doors to open, but remember, Master of Unlocking, she can just unlock them with her lockpick, because remember what I said, that's one of her special skills, which is why Barry gave her the lockpick. See? Continuation. Since the ammo in the game is so limited by design, that's how the game is supposed to work, you are more, or Jill is more encouraged to dodge and use her wits to avoid the zombies rather than just unloading an entire magazine, because that would be a waste. Because the zombies are actually pretty tough, and you'll get tougher enemies as the game goes along, so it's not really worth it to just shooty bang bang all the enemies. It's better to just avoid them and only shoot if you absolutely have to. The mansion also has a lot of areas. It's got a graveyard, it's got a greenhouse, there's also that dark forest, the dark forest that they just came from, where the helicopter crashed and the dogs were. So first, Jill finds a golden arrow with a removable tip. She takes the removable tip and puts it in a stone in the graveyard. This reveals a secret staircase and a secret room. Descending into the secret room, Jill finds a seemingly empty room, but there is a coffin hanging from the ceiling. It is stationary right now, it's not moving. She also finds a book that actually has one of the keys for the mansion embedded in it. There are some doors that Jill cannot pick the lock of. She does need keys to unlock them. These are those keys. She will find multiple of these as we go along the adventure. After returning to the mansion, Jill finds a zombie having some self-care time in the tub. She very rudely interrupts the zombie, pulls the plug, and finds nothing. So you just interrupted that zombie's self-care time for no reason. Thanks, Jill. Very rude. This will be on your report card at the end of the month. In the next room, Jill discovers a shotgun. She takes it with her. Very foolish, because the room she just came from, the roof starts coming down. It's coming down. She starts calling for help because she's about to be crushed. Luckily, Barry comes in and saves her from becoming the iconic Jill sandwich. So she's not a sandwich. She's not flat, crushed like a hydraulic press. She's okay because Barry saved her. But Jill is like, Barry, thanks for saving me, but why are you on this side of the mansion? I thought you were going to go to the other side. But he kind of just brushes it off and it's like, oh, I got bored. Jill continues exploring Luigi's haunted mansion and finds a lighter and a dog whistle. On the way to use these items on some puzzles, she runs into Barry again. They agree that the place is unsafe, and their main priority is finding an escape route while also looking for Wesker and Chris. So when they find the escape route and they find their teammates, they can grab them and get out super easily. Before partying, Barry gives Jill some acid shells for her non-existent grenade launcher, which is good because they are very powerful, especially against living things. Jill heads outside, blows the dog whistle, summons some of these boys, kills them. One of their collars has another one of the keys in it. Jill returns back inside, finds a narrow hall with one of the keys on a stone tablet. It's one of those puzzles where if you take the key, the walls start pressing in, so she's almost going to become a Jill sandwich, but horizontally and not vertically. That's right? But she uses the key from the dog's collar, pops it in the tablet, walls open back up, all safe. Jill returns to the main hall, with no sign of Barry and Wesker. She heads out onto the terrace and finds the body of Forrest, who has apparently been pecked to death by crows. Yep, crows. That's how he went out. Sorry, Forrest. That's Forrest right there. He got pecked to death by crows. However, he does have a grenade launcher, which is far more useful to Jill, considering she's alive and not pecked to death by crows. Now, after just having a brush with a dead comrade, Forrest, she actually finds herself in the company of an alive one, Richard. He is part of the Bravo team. And he is alive, although wounded. Richard tells Jill that there are terrible monsters, and the mansion is not safe. He says his injuries are from being bitten by a giant snake, and that it has poisoned him. It's actually venom. However, he is taking this wound a lot more seriously than his 1996 counterpart.
Jill, this house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Ouch!
Jill recalls seeing a serum and says that she will bring it to him to help him. How kind. While on the path to grab the serum, Jill discovers her love of botany and uses some plant chemicals on a water pump to kill a deadly plant blocking her way. With that plant dead, she can now pick up a sweet mask that she can use to hide her terror. Just kidding, it's another puzzle. She needs to find 4 of these. Having acquired this mask and the serum, she returns back to Richard and administers the serum. Richard then gives her a radio. Seems like an unfair trade. I just saved your life and you just gave me a radio. I mean, I'd be a little annoyed. It's kind of like an unfair Facebook Marketplace trade. Behind another secret door, which you can't get enough of in this place, Jill discovers a copy of the game soundtrack on a music sheet. No, she doesn't. It's just music. I just wanted it to be funny. She returns to the room where she and Barry found some blood and gets an emblem. She goes through a few more rooms, finds part 2 of the music sheet and a piano. She plays the piano, which she is actually good at, unlike someone else. And playing the song, which is Moonlight Sonata, opens a door. Seriously, you have to learn to be able to play the piano to be able to open the doors. Like, can you imagine being tone deaf and working here in the mansion? And it's like, how do I open this door, boss? And it's like, oh, just take some piano lessons, Fred. And Fred, like I said, tone deaf. So he's like playing it all wrong. And all his chords are C major. But the doors are so elaborate, it can't be because they have anything to hide. So, once the piano piece is done, it opens the door. Jill goes through the door, there's an emblem, she takes that one. Door relocks. Now, she takes the emblem from that other room, plops that back in, doors open. See? This is a very, very, very common puzzle. It's not too difficult, but if you forget the item, it's not going to be good for you because you got to go all the way back. Jill goes back to where she got that first emblem, takes the emblem from the piano room, and pops that back in. This opens a grandfather clock where there are some gears inside. Turning the gears unlocks. I'll give you 3 seconds. If you said secret door, you're wrong and gave her another mansion key. By the way, I should probably mention that after Jill is done using these mansion keys, she's just throwing them away. After shooting a quick hi to Richard, Jill opens the attic door to the mansion. Little known fact, it's actually a secret Easter egg in the game that opening the attic door transports you to Australia because Jill is now face to face with a giant fucking snake. Smallest snake in this country, by the way. Richard bursts in, he's up on his feet. After being bitten by a venomous snake, he's up on his feet, and he's helping Jill fight off this giant brown snake, who's, by the way, his name is Yawn, because when he opens his mouth to, attack, it looks like... one of those. I meant to just kind of, open my mouth, but I actually had to yawn, so... awesome. While Richard is fighting the snake and helping Jill, she finds another one of those masks, scoops that up, and they defeat the snake. They defeat Yawn. He's gone. Jill thanks Richard for his help, but unfortunately, the snake gets back up and eats Richard. He pushes Jill out of the way so it doesn't eat Jill, but he does get eaten himself in the process. So, hope you didn't like Richard. He's dead. He's in the stomach of a snake now. As a dedication to his memory, Jill takes his shotgun that he was using to fight Yawn and exits the attic. Jill finds a room with some bugs on display, does one of those switcheroo puzzles, and gets a little crest with a wind symbol on it. She finds the last one of those masks after doing a little puzzle outside, and it's right by that graveyard that we mentioned earlier. Jill returns to that staircase with the suspended coffin, although when she starts inserting the mask, because that's where they go, the coffin starts shaking. As she puts the masks in one by one, it starts going from shaking to thrashing around. The thrashing gets more violent until the chains snap, and the chains holding the coffin up break, and the coffin falls to the ground. So, when the chains snap and the coffin falls from the ceiling, this reveals an enemy known as the Crimson Head Elder. So we're gonna put him on the wall since he's shown up. And I realized I forgot to put Yawn on the wall as well, so he will be here joining us as well. That's Yawn, that's the Crimson Head Elder. Now, that we are adding stuff to the wall, let's have a quick discussion of the enemies that Jill has encountered on her journey. So, before this, Jill had only encountered zombies and the dogs. They're called Cerberus. You don't actually find that out until later, but let's call them that. You might be wondering what this guy is. This is a Crimson Head. Now, when you kill a zombie, it has a chance of doing a further mutation into a Crimson Head. They reanimate with a more reddish appearance, obviously giving them their name. Their eyes also glow white, kind of giving Herobrine. They also gain sharp claws and have increased speed, so they're a bit of a pain in the ass to deal with. Not every zombie has a chance of turning into a Crimson Head. If you deal with them properly, they won't mutate. Crimson Head. I'll give Chris Redfield some Crimson Head. First way to prevent a Crimson Head is to just decapitate the zombie either with a strong enough gun like the shotgun or a critical headshot with your handgun, but that's rare because, like I said, ammo conservation is a big thing in the game. Second way is to burn it with a fire-related weapon. This will prevent it from coming back because the body is completely charred. You have to do it after initially defeating the zombie because burning it will prevent the incubation phase, which causes the Crimson Head to mutate. After killing the Crimson Head Elder, Jill grabs a small metal and stone object, flips a switch, frees herself, and escapes back to the mansion. Although, I would like to add a side note. Jill's picking up a lot of stuff, and there are item boxes in the game that you can put your stuff in, and it also gives you the option to discard stuff once they're not useful anymore. But isn't it weird that the female character is the one with more pockets? Or, more inventory space, because you'd think it'd be the other way around, especially since, Chris has all these, bloody pockets on his character, but no, he gets 6 slots, Jill gets 8, the world's not real, everything's wrong, you're tied up, it's just not good. Jill returns to the mansion. She unlocks a previously unlocked door that leads her outside. As she steps outside, she gets a call on the radio, urging her to not go into the forest, so of course, she goes into the forest. Jill has a chance to use that wind crest that we got before on a gravestone. The name on the gravestone is George Trevor. Completing the puzzle gives her a magnum. Very useful, very powerful, especially against living things. Against the wishes of the voice on the radio, Jill heads further into the forest and she can hear a slight groaning. Doesn't really sound like a zombie groan, it sounds almost kind of human. After going further into the woods, Jill comes across a cabin which looks like it's falling into disrepair. However, the fire is lit, so that means someone has been here recently. Exploring the cabin, Jill only finds a crank, which is a key item we need to progress, but on the way out, she is bopped on the head and knocked out. When she comes to, she sits up and she prepares to leave, but on her way out, she comes across the owner of the cabin and the person who knocked her out. This person is this girl right here, Lisa Trevor. We're going to be calling her Lisa Trevor, even though you don't find that out what her name is for a while, because I can't really think of anything else to call her other than girl, and I don't really want to do that, so I'll put Lisa on the wall right now. So, when we encounter Lisa, we hear the groaning, which we know is her now. We also hear metal chains, because it's kind of hard to see in this picture. I'm sorry, the quality's not very good. But she has her arms chained up. She's also wearing what looks to be human skin, human faces sewn over her own face. And she's just wearing, raggedy clothes, and she's kind of got, blood all over her, and she's all hunched over, kind of giving Quasimodo. Yeah, it's not very good for her. But she's very strong. If she gets a hit on Jill, it will do a lot of damage, because she's got, wood on her arms, and she just bops Jill, and it hurts. So, Jill escapes the cabin and flees back to the mansion. But that's not the last we'll see of Miss Lisa right here. Oh, I should also mention that when Jill got the message, the distress message telling her not to go in the forest, it did mention guns being ineffective against whatever was out there. So Jill does have to run past. She can't just shoot Lisa because it won't do anything. Jill Sandridge returns to the mansion and gets a distress call from Brad, who had abandoned us earlier. She attempts to respond, but the radio breaks and Brad can't hear her. After shooting a few more dogs, Jill uses that crank that we found at Lisa's house, and it reveals a swimming pool with a ladder that she can go down. The swimming pool is very dilapidated. When Jill climbs down the ladder in the swimming pool, she finds a dormitory. We're not talking one in England in the 1800s for little kids. This is for adults. It's for researchers and staff members. It's very, very old, though. It does not look like anyone has been here in yonks. You might be wondering what the researchers are for. Well, don't you worry. Don't you worry. We'll be getting to that very shortly. Inside, Jill travels back to her favourite country, Australia, because the dorm is infested with spiders. These spiders are not your normal size spiders. They are quite big. As you can see here, they are called web spinners. Very dangerous, very ouch, my leg if they bite you. The spiders have now joined the wall. Welcome, spiders. Enjoy your stay. You're expected to clock out by 11 a.m. Jill grabs a red book and narrowly avoids all arachnids before coming across a door where she can hear hushed voices on the other side. The hushed voices mention something about stars and destroying stars and a deal. After hearing this conversation, Jill runs into Barry, who she questions about the conversation, but like before, Barry brushes it off, saying that he was just talking to himself. Jill is not convinced, and neither am I. Barry, what are you hiding? Are you actually secretly a bee from hit movie B-movie starring Jerry Seinfeld? Jill continues through the dormitory by finding one-use keys. She climbs down a ladder and finds a lab-like area completely submerged in water. This is known as the Aqua Ring. It's home to various hostile sharks, the biggest one being Neptune. She is a very big shark, and you might be wondering, how do you know it's a she? Well, I'm choosing to call her a she because do you see how many men there are in this game? There's way too many. We need a balance. Dodging the shark, Jill finds her way into a control panel. After she gets into the control panel, Neptune starts bashing on the glass, raising the pressure. So Jill has to find a way to drain the water. After successfully draining the water, Jellybean needs to find another key to progress. But it seems like Neptune didn't go down so easily. So Jill has to electrocute the water to kill the shark. But seriously, snakes, spiders, great white sharks. All I'm saying, Capcom, is I think I know where you got your inspiration from. After her encounter with the great white shark, Jill leaves that lab and goes up to the dorm. She grabs insecticide spray, pumps it through the wall to get rid of a beehive. She passes through to another room and gets her Breaking Bad on as she creates a serum called V-Jolt, which is effective against the infected plants. Jill returns to the lab and finds the roots of an infected plant called Plant 42. That's this guy right here. Put you right on the wall. She finds the roots and uses the V-Jolt on the roots of Plant 42. After using that V-Jolt, she goes back upstairs and finds the entire body of... Oh, you're a little bit crooked, hang on. Jill goes up and finds the full body of Plant 42, who grabs her with the vines, and Barrett comes in, armed with a flamethrower. Thanks to Jill weakening the roots, he can very easily kill the plant, and is able to free Jill from its grasp. Haha. Jill thanks Barry for saving her again, but now runs into Wesker. If you forgot, that's this guy. Runs into Wesker for the very first time after splitting up. They don't say too much. They discuss Barry's strange attitude. Wesker agrees that he's acting a little bit weird. They plan to explore the remaining rooms of the mansion before finally escaping the place. Jill continues her search for bread and... I fucking wrote bread. I wrote bread and I didn't even realize that I wrote bread. What the fuck? You know what? Bread. Jill continues her search and gets a call from Brad, but she still fails to reach him. Jill finally returns to the mansion, but she discovers a new type of enemy, the Hunter. They are large, reptilian-like, although they do walk on two legs. They have very long claws and can do a lot of damage, so the wise thing is to avoid them, as is the wise thing to do in anything in this game, is to avoid it. After going through another puzzle room, Jill jumps through a hole in the floor, which is what I always do when I encounter holes in the floor. This leads to another part of the mansion, where Jill finds a large battery. Next, Jill must find some jewels for a puzzle that, when complete, gives her an MO disc. These are important for the end of the game, and kind of important for making sure everyone stays alive. Jill travels to the library, where she comes face to face with an old friend, Yawn, who she can now kill very easily because she has the acid shells that will make him die for good. It takes about 4 shots to kill him, 5 if you miss, 6 if you miss again. By 7, just kill yourself. Jillian heads back to the dorm, where she puts that battery she got into a previously empty spot. This activates a switch that she encountered while she was in the caverns. Jill heads back to the underground caverns and encounters an injured Enrico. He is a member of the Bravo team. He tells her that there is a traitor among the STARS unit and mentions Umbrella. Umbrella, by the way, this is the first mention of it. At this point, it's known as a pharmaceutical company that is based in Raccoon City, so it's local. So this is the first mention of it. He mentions there being a traitor, but before he can reveal any more, he is shot dead by someone in the shadows. So rest in peace, Enrico. Didn't know you that well. You might be in competition with Frost for least time alive on screen before death. Jill pursues the person who shot Enrico into the cavern, but comes face to face with her next enemy. It's called the Black Tiger, and I want to give you 3 seconds to guess what the Black Tiger is. 3, 2, 1. Don't bother telling me your mouth is covered with duct tape. It's a spider. I'm guessing that her next enemy is going to be a mountain chicken. Anyway, Black Tiger is very easily defeated by Jill, as she brought her bug spray. Jill finds her way onto a broken elevator. After repairing it, she comes face to face with Barry again. They ponder what might be at the bottom of the elevator, but while they're talking, they're interrupted by a familiar groaning. Where is she? Oh, sorry. Ugh. Lisa, she's back. Barry tells Jill that he will stay and guard the elevator. When Jill does run into Lisa after hearing her groaning, she runs back to the elevator, but see that Barry has left without her. Not very nice. She is betrayed and is forced to find her own way to deal with Lisa because she is still immune to all weapons, so shooting Lisa with the gun will not work. She manages to escape and find her way through some new tunnels where she finds an area that looks oddly homey. Doesn't look as run down and broken as some of the other places that we've explored before. It looks more like a living room. Exploring it, you get to see family photos dated 1967. Remember that the game takes place in 1996, so that's about 30 years ago. The photo that we find is of the Trevor family. This is where we discover Lisa's real name. We also find diary entries explaining that 2 members of the Trevor family, Lisa and her mother Jessica, were experimented on and exposed to a virus known as the progenitor virus. Lisa, the daughter, survived these experiments. Her mother, Jessica, did not. Lisa's mental state deteriorated. She could not accept that her mother was dead, would go after female employees and researchers, cut off their face, and sew them onto her own in a futile search for her mother. These experiments put on Lisa were carried out by Umbrella, further alluding to what Enrico told us about Umbrella being evil and there being a traitor in STARS. And now we know the truth that Lisa Trevor is a victim of human experimentation and has been down here for 30 years looking for her mother, as her mental state and her physical state deteriorated and she can't die because of the progenitor virus infected into her. So now we know that Umbrella is not some neighborhood-friendly pharmaceutical company giving out ibuprofen for starving children. They're actually quite evil. which you will soon find out as we talk about more games. But this is just the start. This is just the start of many, many deplorable things that the Umbrella Corporation has done and so far gotten away with. And I need to mention that I talked about a George Trevor, if you remember that. He was on the gravestone. It's not fully explained how he died or what his relation is in the game, but he is also related to these experiments. In a way, Umbrella is also responsible for his death, but you don't really find that out super easily in the games. And it's not really important to the story overall. The path where we find the diaries that explains Lisa's involvement with all this actually leads back to the cabin where we first met her. Going through that cabin, through the forest back to the mansion, we have means to unlock a previously locked door, and we can go down it, and we can continue to hear Lisa's groaning and moaning the whole way down. As we descend, thinking that we might not be done with Lisa yet, we encounter Barry, who is very surprised to see Jill is still alive. He holds her at gunpoint, but Jill takes the gun and turns it around on him and tells him to explain himself. Before he can explain himself, Lisa comes out of the shadows and starts thrashing around with her chains. Barry tells Jill to give him his gun back so he can protect her. Jill decides to trust him and gives it back. There is a choice in the game that you cannot trust him, but that is not how you get the good ending, so we will ignore that for now. While Barry fends off Lisa, Jill pushes some bricks that are attached to a chain that are attached to a coffin in the middle of the room. After pushing off every single one of these rocks, it pulls the lid of the coffin off, and inside are the remains of Lisa's mum, Jessica. Lisa hobbles her way over to the coffin, sees her mother, gets confirmation that her mother is gone, and after 30 years of being in agony, she knows the truth. So she decides to jump off the ledge of where she had been fighting Barry and Jill, and that's the end of Lisa Trevor. Not a very happy ending, but at least she got some peace. Bean Boozled Jelly Bean passes through the area after defeating Lisa, which shows a hidden staircase in a fountain. This pushes us into our last area, which is a lot more lab-like, kind of like the ones we saw before. She finds more puzzles, not as many now because we're nearing the end. There's also a few more of those discs that we found before. We need those, they're very important, don't forget them. She also encounters a new enemy, the Chimera. This guy is crusty, like he really needs some moisturizer. I think if he got a skincare routine, maybe he could get rid of all that fuzz. He's just not taking care of his skin. It's no good. He's not putting SPF on, so he's just kind of turned out all hideous. But yeah, that's who's in the lab. Maybe he was there for his deliberating skin condition, but yeah. The Chimera are very fast, very annoying, and actually, there was one more thing. I know it's spelt like this, but that's not how I imagined the name to be spelled when I played it. I imagined it to be spelled like this. And since this is my talk, we're going to rename the Chimera the Chimera. So, yeah, because it's my rules, and you can't stop me, so haha. Now, while exploring the lab, Jill will come across more information about Umbrella, which we know now they are up to no good. And their cover as a pharmaceutical company is actually, a cover for a lot more disturbing things. We already know about Lisa Trevor, but all the monsters that we've come across are also the doing of Umbrella. We come across a slideshow that actually reveals the name. That's how we know the names of the Neptune, Severus, all the other stuff here. Jill finds this all out by going through a presentation, like a little cute little PowerPoint, probably with all the word art. But on the last slide, there is a group photo of all the people who are assumed to have worked on these bioweapons, one of which bears somewhat of a resemblance to our STARS captain. That's Jill. This guy, But, come on guys, the one who wears shades all the time and talks in a monotone voice could not possibly be the bad guy, right? Yeah, no. So now we're having some fishy thoughts about Captain Wesker, who we have only seen once since we came into the mansion. Jillian then has to supply power to an elevator by filling a capsule with nitroglycerin and then walking the power supply back to where it came from, because if she runs or gets hit, the sudden movement will cause the nitroglycerin to explode. It's kind of like Castlevania on the N64. After inserting the nitro and inserting the discs, the MO discs, Jill gets on the elevator with Barry, who is here now, and they are very tense because we still don't really know what's going on with Barry at the moment. They make their way into a room and encounter Wesker, who's on a computer with a lot of monitors, kind of giving traffic control room. Before Jill can say anything, Barry points a gun at her head, and it's kind of all over from there. They confront Wesker, and Wesker confesses to being the person who blackmailed Barry with the lives of his family into betraying Stars. He says that he is behind everything and he wanted to eliminate Stars. Eliminating Stars is all according to Kaikaku. However, Wesker has his own plans alongside eliminating Stars. He reveals the ultimate life form, the Tyrant. This is Wesker's OC. It's very important to him. He put a lot of lore into it. He's very proud of his OC. Any fan art, please send to albertwesker001 at starsmail.com, please. Wesker starts info dumping about his OC. Jill makes fun of his OC, so Wesker tries to kill her. Barry shoots Wesker to protect Jill, so we know that Barry is on our side despite being blackmailed. So Barry is all good in our book now. Wounded Wesker releases the Tyrant from his little capsule, but the Tyrant immediately turns on Wesker and slaps him to the ground. Barry jumps in to try and protect Jill, but also gets bitch slapped, so of course the woman is the only one who stops fucking around and actually starts fighting the Tyrant. Now, the Tyrant is actually pretty easy to bring down, not a tough fight at all, which is kind of weird. Maybe Wesker didn't finish doing his world building document, and that's why the Tyrant got nerfed and does not have the skills to be able to take down Jill and Barry. Jellybean gets Strawberry back on his feet, but Albert Whiskers is gone. After leaving Wesker's lab, a self-destruct timer starts. This will become very common. Barry and Jill rush off and reach the door where the MO discs were unlocking, revealing our good friend Christopher. He's safe and sound. He's been here the whole time. Just kind of sitting around while Jill and Barry face every sort of abomination known to mankind. I guess it wasn't Chris's blood. Our 3 present and ready Stars members, Chris, Jill, and Barry, are now ready to escape. They get another call from Brad, but they can't get through. Barry and Chris tell Jill to go up to the surface to get in contact with Brad. I keep calling him Brad. It's Brad. His name is Brad now. I'm so sorry. Jill heads up to the surface and finds a signal flare, firing it up for Brad. I really am trying to say Brad and not do the joke too much, but I'm just saying Brad because he's just Brad now. After firing the signal flare for Brad, Chris and Barry come up to the surface where Jill is. Unfortunately, the Tyrant also shows up at the same time. Yep, he's back, baby. He's back. So, the Tyrant bitch slaps Strawberry and Christopher again, so Jellybean is the last one left. She is able to take him down. After fighting him for a bit, Brad drops a rocket launcher. This is also something that will be very common. The first time Jill tries to fire the rocket launcher, the Tyrant, he uses his special move, the bitch slap, and slaps away the first rocket, but don't worry, she came out with number dos and shoots him again, obliterating the Tyrant. He's gone, he's dead. Wrap it up, folks. Blob comes down with his helicopter, picks up Jellybean, Chris, and Barry. They fly up, the self-destruct ends, entire mansion explodes, killing every single evil resident inside the mansion. It is no more. They fly away into the sunrise, credits roll, the end. There are no more evil residents left. Now, we got a few more things to discuss before we move on to the next game, because don't forget, this is Resident Evil 1, implying the existence of a Resident Evil 2, and that would be correct, there is a Resident Evil 2. But before I end this and set up the new wall, let's quickly go over the differences in Chris's campaign to Jill's, because you might have noticed there is one character on the wall that I did not talk about, and that is this lovely lady right here, Rebecca. She is in Chris's campaign, so we'll very quickly go over the differences, and then I might like knock you out again so I can set up the wall without me like tripping over you or something. So, the differences in Chris's and Jill's campaign are pretty superficial. The story pretty much plays out the same, you just get a little bit different of a side plot. So, the first big thing is that Barry, yes, this is Barry, never appears. It's actually implied that he died during the rush to the mansion at the start, you know, in the beginning, where Jill, Barry, and Wesker are in the mansion. They're like, where's Chris? Where's Chris? Not Chris, sorry. Where's Chris? Eventually they do find him, but you actually never find Barry, and it is implied that he died, although that's not canon because he appears in later installments. And that's what I mean by the story changes being kind of superficial. But then again, Resident Evil has a bit of a reputation for not keeping consistent canon throughout all their games. Chris meets the lovely Rebecca Chambers. She is on the Bravo team. She is the medic. So, in-game, she can heal Chris a few times if he gets injured, but she also is part of his story. Instead of Barry being the companion for Jill, Rebecca is the companion for Chris. They have kind of like a little sister, older brother thing kind of going on. Before the mansion, Rebecca was like on a train with some guy, William Cone or something. He's not important. You actually find Richard with Rebecca. Rebecca is helping Richard get better because, like I said, medic. And Richard does die, but he ends up sacrificing himself for, where is she? He ends up sacrificing himself for Chris and gets eaten by Neptune instead. Not Yawn. Gets eaten by a shark. Pick which way you want to go. You're still going to die from an Australian animal anyway. Chris can't read sheet music, so to pass the piano puzzle, Rebecca is the one who has to play the piano instead of Chris.
That sounded like Moonlight Sonata.
No, it did not. Chris does come across Enrico, just like Jill, although Enrico is a lot more distrusting of Chris because he knows that the Traitor of Stars is a male. And, by the way, the one that shot Enrico was, Wesker, if you didn't figure that out already. I mean, like, he's kind of the big bad, so I don't know who else it could have been. But yeah, Enrico doesn't trust Chris because he's a male, very smart, very, big brain thinking there. Chris does encounter one of his lifelong enemies, the Boulder. In the ledge fight with Lisa, instead of Barry helping, it's Wesker. The same thing happens, you can still push the rocks off and reveal Jessica's corpse to Lisa, but it's a little bit rich to have someone who aided in her torture be the one to finish her off. You rescue Jill from the prison using the ammo discs, but when you confront Wesker in the lab, it is Rebecca and Chris, and Wesker is a little bit more warmer to Chris, like he's not as standoffish.
So you've come. Chris, you make me proud. But of course you are one of my men.
What do you mean by that? There's also this line in the original.
Sorry for my lack of manners, but I'm not used to escorting men.
Huh. Chris also laughs at Wesker's OC and hurts his feelings as well.
That's right. This is the ultimate life form. Tyrant! Chris? Stop it.
He doesn't do that in the remake, but he does call Wesker an old man.
Wesker, you've become senile.
Wesker shoots Rebecca in the chest, but she survives because she's wearing a bulletproof vest. The tyrant still breaks out, but in this scenario, Wesker is actually impaled by the tyrant instead of just getting knocked to the ground. So it's a lot clearer that he dies from the tyrant and not in the explosion, like in Jill's scenario. Ending is pretty much the same. Barry's not there, and Chris gets to shoot the rocket launcher instead. They still fly off into the sunset. They still get Bread to give them the rocket launcher. Mansion still blows up. All the same. Now, as for which ending is canon, as I said before, there are endings that change depending on if you rescue your companion with the MO discs. We're only talking about the best ending, which is the one where in Jill's playthrough, you have Jill, Chris, and Barry in the helicopter. In Chris's, it's Chris, Jill, and Rebecca. And Brad, of course, but he's driving. However, there are some inconsistencies. Barry and Rebecca both appear in future installments, so they canonically survive Resident Evil 1. However, there is no ending in Resident Evil 1 where all of them, Chris, Jill, Barry, and Rebecca, are in the helicopter. So, weigh it up as you see fit. It also makes the implication that Barry died at the start of Chris's really weird, because why would they put that in and then, have Barry in the next games? It doesn't really make sense, but, it's fine, everything's canon until it's not, so let's go over a quick history of the mansion. It is owned by a guy called Oswell E. Spencer. It was a cover for the Umbrella Lab, and the reason that the STARS team were even there was because Wesker, who's part of Umbrella, wanted to have data for the bioweapons. Wesker planned to have Bravo team go in, get killed. This would give them data for the bioweapons to improve them and just research on what their behavior is. Same thing for the Alpha team. He planned to lure them into the mansion and then have all of these guys just kick the bucket so they can have data. As you can see, that did not happen because Wesker died and these guys, these four, they didn't die. And Wesker did, so haha, sucks to be you. However, as we see in the ending, the remaining members of STARS blow up the mansion, so no evidence remains. And that is actually kind of a pickle for one of the future games where they need evidence of what had happened, but that's for a future game. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Now, that's the end of the Resident Evil 1 recap. Next will be Resident Evil 2. I need to take a break, take this down, and put up the new pictures, and I also need a drink because that yapping does numbers on your throat. So I will be right back. You can stay there. Well, I mean, you can stay there. You're not really going anywhere. No one's around, no one's gonna be able to hear you, so why don't you just wait there? I'll be back. Bye bye. Did you really think you could get away?